The airport buzzed with a cacophony of sounds, airplane engines roaring, flight announcements echoing through speakers, laughter of reuniting families, and taxi drivers calling out to arriving passengers. For Regina Moore, it was the familiar symphony of returning home after a conference that had lasted far too long. Almost 2 weeks away from her routine had been productive. The medical conference in a region distant from where she lived offered cutting-edge research, heated debates, and enriching exchanges of experiences. Yet she longed for her own home, the comfort of her apartment, and the aroma of her favorite coffee in the mornings. With a smile, Regina left the baggage claim area. She had arrived a day earlier than planned, determined to surprise her husband, Andrew. Fortunately, a last-minute vacancy had opened on the flight, and she hadn't hesitated to take it. The anticipation of her arrival warmed her heart, dispersing the fatigue of travel. Andrew had promised to pick her up after receiving her message. Regina could already imagine the scene. Him waiting, holding a bouquet of her favorite white roses. But to her disappointment, he wasn't there. She scanned the crowd of people waiting for their loved ones carefully. No familiar face in sight. She furrowed her brow and reached for her phone. After several rings, Andrew answered with a slightly sleepy voice. "Hello, Regina. Is something wrong?" "Andrew, I've already arrived at the airport. Where are you? I asked you to come pick me up." There was a pause on the line. "Oh, Regina, I'm sorry. I think I confused your flight time. I thought you were arriving tomorrow. I'm home now," Andrew mumbled. The explanation seemed unconvincing. Regina frowned. Something in his hesitation and the uncomfortable pause didn't sit well with her. Her intuition, honed through years of work as a doctor, told her he was hiding something. On the other hand, he was a lawyer at a private firm. Perhaps he was overloaded with work. "Andrew, don't worry about it. I'll take a rideshare." "No need for you to make the trip unnecessarily," she said, trying to mask her disappointment. "Are you sure?" "Well, let me know when you get home," he replied with a sigh of relief. Regina hung up and breathed deeply. The enthusiasm for the reunion had vanished. Was he really confused about the times? Or was there another reason for his absence? She grabbed her suitcase and walked toward the airport exit in search of a ride. The cold wind blew against her face, making her shiver. She pulled her jacket tighter to protect herself and looked around, searching for an available car. Suddenly, a familiar sound caught her attention. A female voice. "Please, pay attention to this detail. It's very important to me." "Yes, of course. Do you have a photo?" "Great. I'll do exactly as you asked. Don't worry," replied an unfamiliar man. Regina froze. She could swear the woman's voice belonged to Eleanor, her mother-in-law. She stopped in her tracks, paralyzed. What was Eleanor doing at the airport? Regina knew very well that her mother-in-law hated flying and avoided the chaos of the waiting room whenever possible. Not wanting to be noticed, she instinctively hid behind one of the massive columns supporting the building's ceiling. Her heart raced in her chest. The most important thing was that Eleanor didn't suspect anything. "Try to hold her up on the way. Make up some reason. I need time," she heard Eleanor's voice. Regina cautiously peeked from behind the column. Her mother-in-law was next to one of the cars, energetically gesturing to the driver. Her chest tightened when she saw what Eleanor was holding in her hands. A chill ran down her spine. It was a photo of her, taken during her last trip to the beach with Andrew. Why did she have that photo? And why did she want to delay her? The discomfort Regina felt when talking to Andrew on the phone intensified. Her suspicions began to take shape. Eleanor was hiding something, and it was directly related to her husband. But what? Trying not to attract attention, Regina moved slowly, attempting to catch every word of the conversation. Her intuition screamed that something was wrong. Something was happening behind her back, and she needed to discover what it was. "All right, I'll do my best," replied the driver, examining the photo. "If I see this woman, I'll accept the ride and try to delay her on the way as you asked. I'll make up an excuse. Traffic. construction work. Thank you very much. I'm counting on you. Eleanor sighed, relieved, as she handed the driver a high-value bill. Regina felt her face flush. Her mother-in-law was bribing the driver to delay her. But why? What was happening? Could Andrew have done something wrong? And his mother was trying to cover up? For a moment, Regina wanted to step out from behind the column and demand explanations, but something held her back. Her instinct for self-preservation told her she needed to proceed with caution. Eleanor paid the driver and left the airport. Regina held her breath for a moment, and as soon as her mother-in-law disappeared into the crowd, she emerged from her hiding place and headed determinedly to the taxi stand. Her eyes quickly scanned the area, looking for the driver Eleanor had spoken with. She soon found him. He was a man with a friendly face, wearing a faded plaid shirt and a crumpled cap, probably bought at some clearance sale. Regina approached and, trying to keep her voice as calm as possible, asked, "Hello, are you available? I need to go to Maple Street, number 10. The man hesitated for a moment, as if comparing her to the photo he received. "Yes, of course. Get in," he replied, opening the back door. Regina entered the car, feeling the tension increase with each passing second. She knew that this driver had been instructed to delay her, which meant she needed to be extremely careful from then on. "My name's Michael," said the driver, starting the car. "Nice to meet you," replied Regina, forcing a smile. "Have you been working here long?" she asked, trying to make conversation. "Oh, I guess it's been about 5 years now," he replied, pulling away. "I know everyone around here, both residents and travelers. And you've been at the airport since early today?" she asked innocently. "Yes, I have." "Why?" Regina pretended it was just curiosity. "Oh, nothing," she said, trying to sound casual. Michael hesitated for a moment, as if choosing his words. It was a normal day, had plenty of rides. Regina felt he was hiding something but couldn't identify exactly what. Time passed quickly during the journey, and soon she decided to put aside her suspicion about Eleanor's strange behavior. On the way, the driver began talking about his life. He said he worked non-stop to support his family, telling her about the challenges with rent, debts, and his children's health problems. His voice carried weariness, but not despair. Regina listened attentively, and couldn't help but feel a certain compassion. Given his difficulties, her own problems seemed small and unimportant. "It must be very difficult for you," Regina said when he finished his story. "A little, yes," Michael sighed. "But what can I do? The children are the future. I do everything for them." "You're a good father," Regina said sincerely. Regina took some bills from her wallet and handed them to the driver. "This is for your children. Buy them something nice." Michael hesitated to accept, but she insisted. "Thank you very much," he said sincerely, taking the money. "You're a very kind person." Regina turned her face to the window, trying to hold back tears. She felt alone, hurt, deceived by her husband and mother-in-law. And at the same time, before her was a man who, despite all his difficulties, maintained his kindness and humanity. During the journey, she anxiously waited for the moment Michael would begin to act to delay her, staging some setback. But the driver drove calmly and safely, without trying to deviate from the route or deliberately reduce speed. When they arrived in front of the building, Regina felt immense relief. She reached for her wallet to pay for the ride, but noticed that Michael seemed uncomfortable. "Regina," he said, before she could hand over the money, "I need to tell you something." She became alarmed. "What is it?" Michael hesitated. "Forgive me, but your mother-in-law asked me to delay your trip. She even paid me to do it." Regina felt a stab in her chest. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to stay calm. "And did you do what she asked?" He shook his head. "I couldn't bring myself to. When I saw what a kind and gentle person you are, I simply couldn't. I know I was wrong to accept her money, but I really needed it because of the children. If you want, I can return it." Regina looked at Michael. In his eyes, she saw sincere regret and honesty. "You don't need to return it," she said. "I'm glad you followed your conscience." Michael sighed with relief. "Thank you. I thought you were going to be angry with me, but anyway, I'm not going to keep this money. I'll donate it to the church to help those in need. It wouldn't do me any good to keep it." Regina nodded. "And I'd like to know why my mother-in-law wanted to delay me so badly." The driver shrugged. "That I really don't know. She just said it was a family matter and that I shouldn't get involved, especially since her son is a lawyer, from what I understood." Regina exited the taxi, feeling even more confused. Before she could walk away, Michael handed her a small, handmade business card, colored with crayons. She raised an eyebrow. The driver smiled, a bit embarrassed. "My oldest son, Ethan, made it for me. He says cards like this bring luck. He wants to be an artist, so he's always drawing." Regina took the card. "If you need anything, you can call me anytime," he added. "You never know, right?" She smiled. "Thank you. I'll remember that." "All right. Well, good night. And give my regards to your children from me." Regina waved and headed for the building. When she reached her apartment, she paused at the door, hesitant. What awaited her on the other side? What secrets was Andrew hiding? And what was Eleanor's role in all of this? She took a deep breath and inserted the key into the lock. As soon as she turned the bolt and pushed the door, she was enveloped by an unfamiliar perfume. It was sweet, cloying, like a cruel irony. A pair of high-heeled women's shoes was right in front of her. They were red, patent leather, and visibly not her size. Regina's heart raced. She stood still, hesitant, afraid to take another step into the kitchen. She heard a female laugh, muffled. It was light, provocative. A chill ran down her spine. Gathering courage, Regina took a step forward, and then she was at the kitchen door. The scene before her eyes would be forever etched in her memory. Andrew was sitting at the kitchen table. His shirt was unbuttoned, and in her favorite robe was a young blonde woman with heavy, provocative makeup. She was holding a wine glass and throwing her head back, laughing at something he had just said. Time seemed to stop. Regina stood paralyzed, unable to utter a single word. Andrew jumped when he saw her at the door. The color drained from his face instantly. The blonde slowly turned around and looked at her with a brazen expression, analyzing her from head to toe. "Regina," Andrew mumbled, rising hastily. She remained motionless. "What exactly am I supposed to think?" Regina asked in an icy tone. "Is this your client who came asking for divorce consultation wearing my robe?" Andrew began to panic. He paced back and forth like a caged animal. "Regina, please listen to me. She really is my client. She's going through a difficult situation, a complicated divorce, and I was just trying to help her." "Oh, really?" Regina let out a bitter laugh. "Help her how? By making her wear my robe and serving wine in my kitchen? You really think I'm going to believe that nonsense?" The blonde let out a mocking laugh. "Oh, come on, Andrew," she said, lazily stretching her legs and savoring the wine. "Stop justifying yourself. Everything's perfectly clear." Andrew shot her a furious look. "Tamara, shut up," he hissed through his teeth. Regina raised her eyebrows. "Tamara, so that's the name of my husband's mistress," she murmured, tasting the bitter words. "Or rather, my ex-husband. That sounds more correct." Tears threatened to come, but she refused to cry. Not there, not in front of them. "Regina, I made a mistake." Andrew lowered his head. "I know I was a jerk, but I love you." "Love me?" Regina let out a dry laugh. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have betrayed me." She grabbed her suitcase, turned, and left. "Wait! Regina!" Andrew shouted, running after her. But Regina was already in the hallway. She left the apartment and slammed the door hard, making the walls tremble. In the building's lobby, she ran into Eleanor. Her mother-in-law looked at her face, saw the contained tears. Eleanor lowered her eyes, ashamed. Seeing Regina standing there holding her suitcase, Eleanor whispered, "Regina, forgive me, dear." Her voice sounded remorseful, but Regina just stared at her with sadness. "Were you trying to fix things?" she asked, her voice heavy with pain. Eleanor nodded. without the courage to look up. "I knew," she admitted, in an almost inaudible tone. "I knew Andrew had a mistress." Regina felt a tightness in her chest, but still tried to cover up. "I tried to talk to him, but he wouldn't listen to me." Eleanor sighed. "I thought if I could delay you at the airport, maybe he'd have time to get rid of that woman, clean up the apartment." She hesitated, then added, "Her father is a very influential man. He could harm Andrew's career." Regina laughed, incredulous. "So that's it? You really believed that if I didn't find out today, everything would be fine?" Eleanor tried to justify herself. "I just wanted to save your family. I like you very much, Regina. You're like a daughter to me." Regina let out a bitter laugh. "What beautiful love! If you really cared about me, you wouldn't have covered up your son's betrayal." Tears streamed down her face. All the pain, all the disappointment, all the shattered illusions. She wiped the tears with the back of her hand and took a deep breath. "I'm leaving. Please, don't try to stop me. There's nothing more to be done," Regina said, wiping the tears with the back of her hand. She went down the stairs, dragging her suitcase. Without looking back, Eleanor remained at the top of the stairs, unable to say a word. As she left the building, Regina looked around, not knowing where to go. She felt lost and alone. Her whole world had crumbled in an instant. It was then that she remembered the card the driver had given her. With trembling fingers, she dialed the number and, trying to contain her tears, explained to Michael that she needed his services again. He arrived quickly, as if he had already been nearby, waiting for her call. As soon as he stopped the car, he gave her a surprised look. "What happened?" "Please," Regina choked between sobs. "Take me far away from here." Michael didn't ask questions. He just opened the back door. Regina got in, covered her face with her hands, and cried openly. Understanding her pain, the driver remained silent. He just drove focused on the road, not looking at her in the rearview mirror. After a while, Regina managed to calm down, wiped her tears, and looked out the window. The car was traveling down the highway, moving away from the city. "Where are we going?" she asked in a low voice. "I don't know," replied Michael. "Wherever you want. The important thing is that you feel better." He paused and added, "And don't worry about the money. You've already paid me enough today for a long trip." Regina remained silent, thoughtful. Where should she go? She had no one to turn to. Her parents had died in a fire 5 years ago. Asking for shelter from a colleague at the hospital was also not an option. The next day, the entire clinic would know what had happened. Although deep down she knew that sooner or later everyone would find out. It was impossible to keep something like this a secret for very long. She could rent a hotel room, but at the moment, she didn't have the mental capacity for that. "Take me to the countryside, to a small town on the outskirts of the city," she said. "I have an old house there, inherited from my grandmother. I haven't been there in years." "All right," replied Michael. "If it's to the small town, then to the small town we go." The journey, though short, was exhausting. Regina remained silent the entire time, immersed in her thoughts. All her dreams and plans had been destroyed. How could she be so naive and trust so much? How did she not notice that Andrew no longer loved her? But the question that troubled her most was, why? Why did Andrew do this to her? What had she done wrong? Michael, noticing her state, offered to buy coffee and even suggested a snack, but she declined. She had no appetite. It was already dusk when they finally arrived at the small town. Surrounded by forests and fields, Regina's grandmother's house, Olivia, was on the outskirts, away from the others. It was old, leaning to one side, with a garden overtaken by weeds. "Is this the place?" asked Michael, stopping the car. "Yes," replied Regina, getting out. "Thank you very much. I don't know what I would have done without you." "It was nothing," he replied. "If you need anything, call me." Michael left, leaving Regina alone in front of the old house. She stood still, observing the construction worn by time, feeling completely empty. Sighing, she opened the gate and entered the yard. The tall, dry grass crackled under her feet. The house seemed abandoned and unwelcoming, but it was still her inheritance, her refuge, a place where she could be alone, think, and finally try to recover. Regina opened the door and entered. Inside, everything was covered in dust, and the air was heavy with time. The aged furniture remained in the same place. She turned on the light and looked around. Everything was exactly as she remembered from her childhood. The old sofa, the rocking chair, the shelf filled with old books. On the wall hung a photo of her grandmother. Regina approached, ran her fingers over the dusty glass, and whispered, "Grandma." The weight of everything that had happened fell upon her at once. Regina collapsed in tears. That night, she took a long time to fall asleep. She tossed and turned, reliving every moment of her life. She knew she would have to start from scratch. She needed to forget Andrew, his betrayal, her old life. But how? How to erase from her heart someone she had loved so much? The next morning, she woke up with a headache. She went out to the yard and breathed in the fresh country air. The sun was shining brightly. The birds were singing. Life was continuing its course. Regina decided she needed to act. She couldn't simply stay there lamenting. Since she had returned from the trip earlier, she still had a full day off before returning to the hospital. So, she started with the cleaning, washed the floor, dusted, and organized the rooms one by one. The chores helped distract her from sad thoughts. Gradually, Regina began to feel a little better. At lunchtime, she decided to prepare something to eat. She already knew the refrigerator would be empty. After all, the house had been abandoned for a long time. With no other option, she grabbed her purse and headed to the market, which was in the center of the small town. After buying the groceries, she headed back home and on the way met an elderly neighbor. "Hello, my dear," said Mrs. Helen, smiling. "It's been a long time since I've seen you. How have you been?" "Hello," replied Regina. "I'm managing. I'm happy to see you here. If you need anything, look for me. I can help you and tell you the news from the small town." "Thank you," Regina said gratefully. Upon arriving home, she prepared lunch. The rest of the day passed amid household chores and small attempts to organize the house to make it more comfortable. In the past, she and Andrew had planned to transform her grandmother's house into a weekend retreat, but the idea never came to fruition. Work always got in the way. Either Regina was on call at the hospital, or Andrew was busy with endless hearings. The next morning, Regina woke up again with a headache. It was then that she decided. She needed to go back to work. It was the only thing that could help her move forward. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as the coffee maker completed its cycle. If she were at home, Regina would certainly prepare a strong, full-bodied coffee the way she liked it. But in her grandmother's house, she had to settle for the basics. She put on a coat and walked to the bus stop. Requesting a ride share every day was out of the question. She couldn't afford to waste money at that moment. The bus, as always, was late. As soon as she boarded, she looked for a seat by the window and settled in. Finally, she could rest a bit and doze off to the monotonous rhythm of the vehicle traveling down the road. However, upon arriving at the clinic, she was greeted with an unpleasant surprise. A stern voice echoed down the hallway as soon as she crossed the door of the sector. "You must be Dr. Regina Moore." She startled and looked in the direction of the voice. A tall man with a severe expression was observing her with a critical look. "Yes, that's me. And you are?" Regina asked, surprised. "Dr. Richard Foster, your new department head," he said, crossing his arms. "And I'll tell you right away that I don't like it when my team arrives late or when travel reports aren't submitted on time." Regina was speechless. She had no idea that during her absence, they had changed the sector's leadership. "I want that report ready today. I don't need your excuses," Richard fumed, casting a critical look at Regina from head to toe. "For failing to comply with the rules, you'll lose the bonus, and additionally, You're scheduled for an extra shift. Consider this a reminder that I don't tolerate negligence in my sector." Regina swallowed her indignation in silence. This hurt. First her husband's betrayal. Now this. Was life really like this? Everything crumbling at once, as if nothing had value. She entered the doctor's lounge and found her colleagues. They greeted her with sympathetic looks. "We heard about your trip and also about the new boss's impatience," commented a colleague. "Is everything okay?" "Not really," replied Regina, trying to smile, but the smile didn't come. "Don't worry," said another. "He treats everyone like that. He wants to impress the superiors. They say he came from another city and already has his eye on the director's position. Can you imagine?" Regina sighed and sat down at the desk. She turned on the computer. She needed to finish the report as quickly as possible. She tried to concentrate, but her mind kept returning to Andrew. Regina's thoughts were interrupted when Helen called out to her. "What is it?" she asked. "Did you hear about the new patient?" "Complicated case." Regina looked away from the screen. "What happened?" "A 10-year-old boy, Gabriel, orphan, found wandering the streets. He was found begging. He has leukemia and urgently needs a bone marrow transplant." Regina sighed sadly. As an experienced doctor, she knew that finding a compatible donor would not be easy at all. "We'll look," she said firmly. "We'll do everything within our power." She spent the entire day immersed in work, caring for patients, analyzing medical records, and discussing cases with colleagues. At the end of her shift, she decided to meet the youngest patient in the ward, the boy Gabriel. When she entered the room, she saw a skinny boy with pale skin and large, sad eyes. He was looking out the window, lost in thought. Regina approached slowly and sat down beside the bed. "Hi, Gabriel," she said softly. "My name is Regina. I'm a doctor here." The boy turned slowly to her and managed a weak smile. "Hi, how are you feeling?" "Not good," sighed Gabriel. "I'm tired of being here." "I understand," said Regina, gently holding his hand, "but you need to be strong. We're going to help you." He looked at her hopefully. "Will you manage?" Regina hesitated for a moment. She didn't want to give false hopes, but she also couldn't discourage him. "We'll do everything possible," she replied. "The most important thing is not to lose faith." Gabriel sighed and looked back out the window. "I don't think I'll be lucky," he murmured softly. "I was a bad person. I behaved badly." Regina looked at him in surprise. "Before, I used to beg for money at the airport," Gabriel said in a low voice. "My mother died. I never knew my father." He averted his gaze. "I needed to survive somehow. I ran away from the orphanage several times. I didn't like it there." Regina felt a tightness in her chest. So young, and already having gone through so much. "Gabriel, you're not a bad boy," she said, hugging him lightly. "You just tried to survive." He looked at her with watery eyes. "Do you really think so?" "I'm sure," replied Regina. "And I promise, we're going to help you. You'll get better." Gabriel sketched a small smile, and Regina saw a glimmer of hope in his gaze. She knew she needed to do everything possible to help him. "Can I expect you every day?" asked Gabriel, wiping away his tears. "For you to come here and talk with me. Being alone is so boring." "Of course," smiled Regina. "I'll stop by here every day. We can talk, play something, or read a book." Regina stayed in the room a while longer, telling him stories. "Regina, thank you," said Gabriel. "You're very kind." She left the room with a heavy heart, but with the firm decision to help him. In the days that followed, she spent all her free time beside the boy. They read, played board games, and simply talked. Gabriel spoke about his life, his mother, and the dreams he never got to realize. Regina listened attentively and realized that he was changing. Every day, his eyes had more sparkle and hope, but she also didn't forget the search for a donor. She consulted databases, talked with colleagues, looked for any information that could help. So far, without success. Additionally, the new boss didn't give her a minute of peace. Richard would find fault with every decision she made, review her reports numerous times, and make her redo everything under the slightest pretext. Regina tried to ignore him, but it was difficult. After another exhausting day at the hospital, she caught the bus back to the small town. Upon arriving, she lit the stove, prepared dinner, and sat at the table. The house was silent and tranquil. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Regina shuddered. Who could appear at that hour? She got up and opened the door. Before her stood Michael. "What are you doing here?" asked Regina, surprised. "I didn't hear the car. You didn't walk here, did you?" "Hello, Regina. I couldn't just leave you here alone," he said, smiling. "I brought some groceries for you. I left the car at the entrance to the small town, or else the dogs would bark at my poor car all night. They don't like strangers much around here." Regina raised her eyebrows, surprised. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're very kind." Michael smiled. "It was nothing. Just take care of yourself. It'll be okay. Would you like some coffee?" Regina invited. He shook his head. "Better leave it for next time. My children must be waiting for me already. They're terrible when I'm away for too long." Regina nodded, and he said goodbye. As soon as the car disappeared down the road, she closed the door and leaned against it, her eyes filled with tears. Once again, she was alone. The following days passed amid intense work. Regina dedicated herself to the maximum, caring for patients, helping them face their illnesses. She did everything to forget her personal pain. And during all this time, Andrew didn't even bother to call to see how she was or if she needed anything. He simply erased 7 years of marriage, as if nothing had happened. "It would have been better if I had never returned from that conference," Regina murmured to herself. The office door opened, and Richard entered. "Dr. Regina," he said in a cold voice, "as you know, we are facing difficulties in finding a donor for our young patient. Understand that we need to resolve this urgently." Regina sighed, tired. She had already searched tirelessly for a donor, contacting medical centers and specialized forums, but so far without success. "I'm doing everything I can," she responded. "That's not enough," retorted Richard in a harsh tone. "I'll repeat, if the donor isn't found soon, I'll have to take measures." Regina clenched her fists. She knew that Richard just wanted a pretext to get rid of her because it was her responsibility to find a donor. On the other hand, Gabriel was an orphan. There was no one who could help him. The public system was too slow. That night, Regina returned to the small town completely exhausted. She sat on the porch steps and was thoughtful. What to do? How to save Gabriel? Perhaps she could be the donor, but the regulations prohibited staff from donating to patients under their care. Suddenly, she remembered Michael. The driver mentioned that he knew many people. Regina hesitated for a moment, then picked up the phone. In recent days, Michael had become almost a guardian angel to her. "Good evening. This is Regina, the doctor from the clinic. Do you remember me?" "Regina, of course I remember you." "What happened?" he responded attentively. "I need your help," she said, distressed. "We have a seriously ill patient who urgently needs a bone marrow transplant. We're looking for a donor, but so far, we haven't been able to find one." "I understand," said Michael thoughtfully. "I'll see what I can do." Regina felt immediate relief. "Thank you very much. I'm counting on you." A few days later, the phone rang. "Regina, I have good news," said Michael. "I found someone who wants to donate to the patient." She could hardly believe what she was hearing. "Who?" "Me," he responded without hesitation. "Are you serious?" "Yes. I'm willing to take the necessary tests, and if I'm compatible, I want to donate." Regina was speechless. At that moment, she would have hugged Michael if he were there. The next morning, he arrived at the clinic accompanied by his 4 children, Ethan, Jason, Noah, and Lucas. Regina smiled when she saw them. "Good morning," she greeted. "Good morning," the boys responded in chorus, a bit shyly. She looked at Michael with gratitude. "Thank you very much for agreeing to help." "It was nothing," he said. "If I can help, why wouldn't I? Especially for such a young boy." Regina took him to the examination room while his children waited in the hallway. About an hour later, Michael came out of the room with a somewhat tense face. Michael emerged from the room with a downcast expression. "What happened?" asked Regina, concerned. "The tests showed that I'm not compatible," he said, disappointed. Regina felt a tightness in her chest. She had so much hope, and now, once again, they were at a dead end. And now, how to help Gabriel? For a moment, she felt like screaming in frustration. That's when Michael's oldest son, Ethan, approached hesitantly. "Dad, what if I try?" he asked. "Maybe I'm compatible." Regina looked at him, surprised. "This is very serious, Ethan," she said. "Are you sure?" "I've thought about it," he responded, determined. "I want to help." Michael exchanged a significant look with Regina, and then shrugged. "If he wants to try," he said. Regina took the boy to the examination room, while everyone anxiously waited. Minutes that seemed like hours dragged on. Suddenly the door opened, and the laboratory technician entered, excited. "This is incredible!" she exclaimed. "Ethan's cells are perfectly compatible for the transplant." Regina could hardly believe it. Finally, hope for Gabriel. She ran to the hallway and hugged Ethan. "You're a true hero," she said, emotional. The boy smiled a bit awkwardly. "I haven't saved anyone yet, but I will." The news that the driver's son would be the donor for Gabriel soon spread throughout the clinic. Everyone was happy for the boy and proud of Ethan. Later, Regina went to Gabriel's room. "I have good news," she said, smiling. "We found a donor for you." The boy's eyes sparkled with happiness. "Thank you, Dr. Regina," he said. "Don't thank me," she responded. "Thank Ethan. He's the real hero." Michael remained by his son's side the entire time, supporting him at each stage. Finally, the day of the surgery arrived. Regina waited in the hallway, mentally repeating the words of protection that her grandmother used to say. Deep down, she was very apprehensive about the patients. The operation lasted several hours. When the doctor finally came out of the room, Regina went to him with her heart racing. "How was it?" she asked, holding her breath. "Everything went well," replied the doctor. "The patient is stable, and Ethan is also doing great. He's a true hero. It's been a long time since I've seen someone so brave." Regina let out a long sigh of relief. At that moment, she felt like the happiest person in the world. In the days that followed, the boys recovered well. They stayed in neighboring rooms, exchanging funny notes that the nurses and assistants delivered between them. Regina visited them almost every day. She saw Gabriel gaining strength, his skinny body gradually recovering vitality. One day, he looked at her and smiled. "Dr. Regina, now I have a family. Ethan is my brother." Regina realized that Gabriel had finally found what he most lacked: love and support. After the transplant, he began to recover gradually. He regained his appetite, started to gain weight, and, most importantly, he started to smile again. Regina visited him whenever she could, played with him, and encouraged him in each small achievement. She became his friend, mentor, and a kind of adoptive mother all at once. Ethan also recovered well after the donation. As soon as he completed the rehabilitation period, he returned to school and continued to fill Michael with pride with his performance. Over time, Regina and Michael began to meet more frequently. Together, they would take Gabriel for walks in the park, and eventually, they started going out alone. Regina couldn't help but notice how kind the driver seemed to her. He was gentle, attentive, and always knew how to support her in difficult moments or bring out a smile on sad days. But there was something that still prevented her from moving forward. Her marriage to Andrew remained undefined. He hadn't taken any action to ask for a divorce, perhaps waiting for her to take the first step. Or maybe he didn't even think about getting divorced at all. When she finally felt a little stronger emotionally, Regina decided it was time to take the next step. It was time to resolve the divorce. With trembling fingers, she dialed Andrew's number. "What do you want now?" he grumbled, irritated when he answered. "I want to know when we can meet to discuss the details of the divorce." "What details? As if it wasn't already clear, we need to talk about the division of assets." It was years of marriage. The house, our things. I have a right to my share. Andrew let out a cynical laugh. You forgot who you're dealing with? I'm a lawyer. I know all the loopholes in the law. You won't get anything. In fact, I've already transferred the apartment to my mother's name. Your share doesn't exist. Regina felt her blood boil. I'm not naive either. If necessary, I'll file a lawsuit. We'll see who wins. Go ahead and try, mocked Andrew. You'll just waste time and money. And don't think that driver of yours can help you. I know everything about you two. Regina was shocked. You followed me? I didn't need to. I have my sources. And believe me, if you continue to insist, you'll regret it. Regina squeezed the phone tightly. The one who's going to regret it is you. I won't give up. Before she could continue, Andrew hung up on her. She took a deep breath, trying to contain her anger. The next day, she went straight to a lawyer's office. She explained everything: the marriage, the betrayal, the threats, and Andrew's attempt to avoid the process. The lawyer listened to everything attentively and, after a few moments of reflection, said, "You have a good chance of winning this case. Your allegations are strong. We'll gather all the necessary evidence, find witnesses, and demonstrate to the court that Andrew is acting in bad faith." Regina sighed, relieved. "I hope so. I just want this to be over soon." "But don't be deceived," warned the lawyer. "It will be a long and exhausting process. You need to be prepared." She nodded firmly. "I'm ready. I won't back down." The following day, during her day off, Regina took advantage of the time to organize the house. In the midst of the tidying up, she heard knocks at the door. When she opened it, she was surprised to see Eleanor standing on the porch. Her mother-in-law hesitated for a moment before entering. "Regina, please forgive me," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I acted wrongly, but I didn't know what to do to restrain Andrew and save your marriage. I feared he would do something impulsive." Regina remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "I know you may hate me, and I deserve it, but I want you to know I'm sick. I don't have much time left." Regina was paralyzed. "What are you saying?" "It's true," Eleanor sighed. "I hid it from you both for a long time so as not to worry you, but now I need to tell you everything." She paused and then continued. "I've also included you in my will. I left the apartment to you. Andrew tried to prevent it, but it's already official." Regina's eyes widened in disbelief. Tears welled up in her eyes as she embraced her mother-in-law by the shoulders. "But why? You could have left everything to Andrew." Eleanor shook her head. "I did what was right. I want you to be happy. Regina, you deserve it. You're a good, honest woman, different from my son. Andrew has always been weak and easily influenced." They remained silent for a while, just embracing. In that moment, Regina realized that Eleanor truly loved her and only wanted her well-being. They spent the day together, talking about life, love, and forgiveness. Eleanor told about Andrew's childhood, his father, and the difficulties they faced over the years. Regina listened attentively, understanding that each person carries their own tragedies and mistakes. As evening fell, Eleanor began to feel very unwell. Regina helped her lie down and called an ambulance. The doctors took her to the hospital, and Regina was left alone in the house. She felt empty and lost. She remembered her grandmother and decided to go to the garden. Among the tall grass and bushes, she found an old flower bed overgrown with weeds. With her hands, she cleared the area and, to her surprise, saw that daisies, her grandmother's favorite flowers, still grew there. She picked some and took them inside. After a moment of reflection, she placed them in an antique vase and smiled slightly. Life continued, despite everything. The days passed. Regina continued with her work, caring for patients and helping Gabriel recover from surgery. She tried her best not to think about the case against Andrew, but the worry constantly returned, bringing anxiety. After tests and observation, Eleanor was discharged and could return home under medical care. The doctors knew that, in Eleanor's case, medicine could do little. At home, at least, she would have more comfort. Michael continued by Regina's side, supporting her in everything. Over time, he became not just a friend, but a true pillar in her life. One night, during a shift, Regina was in the doctor's lounge organizing documents for the legal process when she noticed the curious glances from nurses and assistants as Michael appeared. "Hi, what are you doing?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Preparing for the hearing," sighed Regina, massaging her temples. "Andrew doesn't want to give me my share of the apartment." Michael held her hand firmly. "It'll be all right. I'm with you." Regina smiled, feeling comforted. "Thank you. That means a lot to me." At that moment, Gabriel appeared at the door. He was much better, and sometimes discreetly escaped from his room, evading the nurse's vigilance. "Dr. Regina, I'm coming to the court too," he announced. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. "But why? You need to rest. I want to support you. You did so much for me. I want everyone to know I'm with you, like a real adult." Regina smiled and hugged him by the shoulders. "Thank you, my dear." On the day of the hearing, Regina woke up with a heavy feeling in her chest. She felt exhausted, but knew she needed to be strong. As she left the house, she found Michael waiting for her at the gate of her grandmother's old house. Beside him was Gabriel, wearing his best suit, a gift from Ethan, who considered him a true brother. "It'll be all right. We're with you," said Michael, embracing her. Regina took a deep breath and entered the car. The courthouse was packed. As soon as she entered, she saw Andrew sitting in the front row. He wore an impeccable suit and displayed an arrogant and self-confident look. Beside him was his attorney, an experienced professional known for his aggressive tactics. Regina wondered why Andrew, being a lawyer, wasn't defending his own case. Could it be that he didn't trust himself? Eleanor was also in the audience. She looked very weak, but her gaze showed determination. The judge entered and took his place. The hearing began. Andrew's lawyer began his defense, trying to tarnish Regina's reputation. He made insinuations about her moral conduct, trying to paint her as an irresponsible wife. Regina knew it was all lies, but it was still painful and humiliating to hear. When Andrew spoke, he adopted a melodramatic tone. He told the court he had suffered greatly from the separation, and that Regina, supposedly unfaithful, had broken his heart. He tried to appear convincing, but his performance sounded pathetic and forced. When it was her turn to speak, Regina kept her voice firm, clearly recounting how Andrew had betrayed, deceived, and destroyed the marriage. She also emphasized that she had a right to part of the assets since she had financially contributed to their life together for years. Then Eleanor took the stand. With a weak but determined voice, she confirmed everything Regina had said. She revealed the existence of the mistress, spoke about her son's lies and betrayals, making it clear that he wasn't a victim of anything. Andrew's lawyer tried to discredit his own mother, but Eleanor remained firm. She was speaking the truth, and her words were irrefutable. After the testimonies, the judge announced a recess. In the hallway, Michael and Gabriel waited for Regina. "How was it?" asked Michael. "It went well, but I still don't know how this will end." "It'll work out. I know it," said Gabriel with conviction. After the break, the judge returned to the room and announced the decision. The court recognized Regina's right to a portion of the property and ordered Andrew to comply with the division of assets. Andrew rose from his seat, shouting and cursing, beside himself with rage. Security had to escort him out of the courtroom. Regina remained motionless for a few moments, still trying to absorb what had just happened. She had won. She had achieved justice. Michael and Gabriel approached and embraced her. "You did it!" exclaimed Michael. "I knew it would work out," whispered Gabriel. Regina's tears finally fell. This time, they were tears of relief and happiness. Shortly after, Eleanor passed away. Regina suffered greatly from the loss. Deep down, she felt guilty for not having managed to repay everything her mother-in-law had done for her. Andrew tried to appeal the court decision, but lost in all instances. In the end, he was forced to accept defeat. Regina received half of the assets acquired during the marriage and also the inheritance left by Eleanor, ensuring her financial stability. With no way out, Andrew had to accept the little that remained to him, but his punishment didn't end there. As soon as his mistress discovered he had lost part of his wealth, she promptly abandoned him without hesitation. Ruined and alone, Andrew left the city, taking with him only the weight of his own choices. No one missed him. Regina continued working at the clinic, helping patients in their recovery. She also continued supporting Michael and his children, becoming increasingly close to them. And then, finally, a new life began. Now she was truly free. She knew the future would still bring challenges, but she was ready to face them. One evening, Michael appeared at Regina's house, holding a bouquet of roses. He seemed nervous. "Regina, I need to tell you something," he began hesitantly. She looked at him with curiosity and smiled playfully. "And what does my noble knight wish to tell me?" Michael took a deep breath. "I love you." Regina was paralyzed for a moment. She hadn't expected that confession, at least not at that moment. There was a brief silence until she smiled and replied, "I love you too." Regina and Michael's gazes met, laden with contained desire. He slid his fingers across her face, and a shiver ran down her skin. When their lips finally touched, the kiss started soft, but soon transformed into something more intense. Michael pulled her close, and Regina entwined her fingers in his hair, surrendering to the passion growing between them. The warmth of their bodies, the accelerated breathing, the urgency in their touches, everything said what words didn't need to express. When they pulled apart, his eyes were dark with emotion. "I've wanted this so much," he murmured. Regina smiled, breathless. "Me too." Then he kissed her again, in no rush to let her go. She felt that after everything, she had found all she had always desired: love, family, happiness. About a week later, Regina and Michael filed two important requests, one for marriage and another for the adoption of Gabriel, who had already won their hearts. A month later, the registry office hall was filled with flowers and smiles. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the happy faces of the guests. The atmosphere was one of pure celebration. Regina and Michael exchanged glances, knowing this was just the beginning of a new and wonderful journey. They had decided to unite their destinies. In the hall, he awaited her anxiously, standing before the registry table. He was elegant in his new suit, his gaze filled with emotion. Beside him were his children, lined up and impeccable, ready to witness that special moment. Regina smiled, looked at the men in her life, and felt in her heart the certainty that she had found true happiness. It had been a difficult path, full of challenges, but all of that had led her here. Now she knew. In life, anything is possible as long as you have faith in love and never lose hope. The family moved into a spacious house in a pleasant neighborhood not far from the hospital where Regina worked. It had a large backyard where the children could play, and they transformed one of the rooms into a studio for Ethan, who continued to develop his artistic talents. The other children also flourished in the new environment, each finding their own interests and passions. Gabriel, fully recovered, blended perfectly into the family and formed a special bond with Ethan, who had saved his life. Michael started his own transportation business, balancing work with family life. He took pride in attending every school event and helping with homework, continuing to be the dedicated father his children needed. Regina admired his unwavering commitment to their family. Regina's professional life took a surprising turn when Dr. Richard Foster, who had initially been so difficult to work with, faced a medical scandal that forced the hospital to reconsider his position. Impressed by Regina's dedication and the success of Gabriel's case, the hospital board offered her the position of head of the pediatric oncology department. It was an opportunity to make a real difference in the lives of children like Gabriel, and she accepted with gratitude and determination. One evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, a daily ritual they all cherished, Regina looked at the faces surrounding her. 5 children engaged in animated conversation, sharing stories from their day. Michael, catching her gaze, reached for her hand under the table and squeezed it gently, his eyes reflecting the same contentment she felt. In that moment, Regina understood that sometimes life's greatest wounds can lead to unexpected healing. The betrayal that had once shattered her world had ultimately guided her to where she truly belonged. The path had been painful, but the destination was worth every tear shed along the way. Outside the window, daisies similar to those her grandmother had grown now bloomed in their garden, a connection to her past that complemented the promise of her future. Regina Moore Lewis had come full circle, finding not just a new love, but a whole new definition of family, one built on choice, compassion, and unconditional acceptance. "Are you happy?" Michael whispered to her, noticing her contemplative expression. Regina's answer came without hesitation. "More than I ever thought possible." And it was true. From the ashes of betrayal, she had built something beautiful, a testimony to resilience, forgiveness, and the extraordinary capacity of the human heart to heal and love again. The seasons changed, and with them, the lives of the Lewis Moore family continued to flourish. 5 years had passed since Regina and Michael had exchanged vows at the registry office, 5 years filled with challenges, growth, and an abundance of love. On a crisp autumn morning, Regina stood at the kitchen window, coffee cup in hand, watching the children board the school bus. Gabriel, now 15 and taller than she remembered him ever being, helped his younger brother Lucas with his backpack. Ethan, at 19, was preparing for his first year of college, having earned a scholarship to study art. His talent had blossomed beyond anyone's expectations. The garden bloomed with daisies and roses, a living memorial to both her grandmother and Eleanor. "Penny for your thoughts?" Michael's arms encircled her waist as he rested his chin on her shoulder. "Just counting my blessings," Regina replied, leaning into his embrace. "Sometimes I can't believe this is my life." Michael kissed her cheek. "Better believe it. You fought hard for it." Sikit, his transportation business had grown from a single car to a fleet of 15 vehicles, providing reliable employment for people who needed second chances. Single parents, recovering addicts, those who society had written off, but who Michael saw potential in. He never forgot what it felt like to struggle, and his generosity had become legendary in their community. Regina's phone chimed with a notification. "The hospital board meeting is in an hour," she said, turning in his arms. "Today's the day. They'd be fools not to approve it," Michael assured her, his confidence in her unwavering as always. The Pediatric Oncology Center had been Regina's dream for the past 3 years, a state-of-the-art facility where children battling cancer could receive treatment in an environment designed to support not just their medical needs, but their emotional well-being too. She had secured most of the funding, designed the protocols, and assembled a team of the most compassionate healthcare professionals she knew. "I just wish Eleanor could see this," Regina said softly. The inheritance from her mother-in-law had provided the seed money for the project, a final gift that had set in motion a legacy greater than either of them could have imagined. "She knows," Michael replied simply, "and she'd be so proud of you." At the hospital, Regina walked the familiar corridors with purpose, nodding greetings to colleagues and stopping to chat with patients and their families. The once intimidating Dr. Richard Foster had long since left after his disgrace, replaced by leadership that valued compassion alongside competence. Regina had helped shape that culture shift, proving that kindness was not a weakness, but a strength in healing. "Dr. Moore Lewis," a voice called from behind her. Regina turned to find a young woman hurrying toward her, white coat flapping. Dr. Sarah Chen, a brilliant oncologist Regina had mentored from residency. "The board's already gathering, and I wanted to show you the final renderings before the presentation." Together they reviewed the architectural plans for the Regina and Eleanor Moore Center for Pediatric Oncology, a name Regina had insisted upon, honoring the woman who had, in her final act of love, made it all possible. The center would feature bright, cheerful treatment rooms, outdoor healing gardens, family accommodation spaces, and cutting-edge research facilities. "It's perfect," Regina whispered, her finger tracing the outline of what would soon become reality. The board meeting proceeded exactly as Michael had predicted. Unanimous approval, followed by handshakes, congratulations, and the popping of champagne corks. Construction would begin next month, with doors opening to patients within a year. As Regina drove home that evening, her heart full to bursting, her phone rang through the car speakers. She answered to hear Ethan's excited voice. "Mom! Gabriel got in. He just got the email. Full scholarship." Regina pulled over, tears of joy blurring her vision. Gabriel had applied to a prestigious science program, determined to follow in Regina's footsteps and become a doctor himself. His essay about his own battle with leukemia and the bone marrow transplant that had saved his life had apparently moved the admissions committee deeply. "Tell him I'll be home in 20 minutes. Nobody starts celebrating without me." When she pulled into the driveway, balloons were already tied to the mailbox. Inside, the house hummed with the joyful chaos she had come to cherish. Michael preparing Gabriel's favorite meal, the younger boys setting the table, Ethan and Jason hanging a hastily made congratulations banner across the living room. Gabriel ran to her the moment she entered, nearly knocking her over with his embrace. No longer the frail, sad-eyed boy from the hospital. He had grown into a thoughtful, determined young man, with his brother's compassionate heart and Regina's analytical mind. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "You did this yourself," Regina corrected him, pulling back to look at his face, a face that had become as dear to her as if she had carried him in her own body. "Your courage, your perseverance. I just had the privilege of witnessing it." That night, as they celebrated around the dinner table, the doorbell rang. Michael exchanged a curious glance with Regina before going to answer it. From the dining room, she heard the murmur of voices. Then Michael called, "Regina, you might want to come here." In the entryway stood a woman Regina had never seen before, perhaps in her 60s, with a familiar tilt to her chin. Beside her was a teenage girl whose eyes, Regina caught her breath, were exactly like Gabriel's. "My name is Patricia Wilson," the woman said hesitantly. I was Gabriel's mother's sister. This is Sophia, his cousin." She clutched a newspaper clipping, an article about the upcoming oncology center and Regina's work with pediatric cancer patients. In it, Gabriel had been mentioned as her adopted son, a leukemia survivor. "We've been looking for him for years," Patricia continued. "After my sister died, the foster system, they separated them. We found Sophia, but Gabriel had disappeared until we saw this." Regina felt the room tilt slightly. Gabriel had family, blood relatives who had been searching for him. What would this mean? Her heart constricted with a fear she hadn't felt since the day she'd discovered Andrew's betrayal. "Mom?" Gabriel appeared behind her, freezing when he saw the visitors. "What's going on?" The next few minutes unfolded like a dream, recognition dawning on Gabriel's face as Patricia showed him photos of his mother, his tiny hand clutched in Sophia's when they were toddlers. Tears and hesitant hugs, questions tumbling over one another. "Would you like to come in?" Regina finally managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "We were just celebrating. Gabriel's been accepted to university, pre-med." Over dessert, the story emerged. Patricia had been overseas when her sister died suddenly. By the time she returned and sorted through the legal complications of seeking custody as a non-citizen, the children had been placed in separate foster homes. She had never stopped searching, even after adopting Sophia formally. "I have a photograph album," Patricia said. "Pictures of your mother when she was young. You have her smile." Gabriel looked at Regina, his eyes seeking reassurance. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Your history is a gift," she said softly. "It doesn't change who you are or who we are to each other." Later, after Patricia and Sophia had left with promises of Sunday dinner the following weekend, Regina sat on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge. Michael joined her, draping a blanket over their laps. "You okay?" he asked, knowing her too well to be fooled by her composed exterior. "I will be," she answered honestly. "It was just unexpected. For a moment I was afraid that we might lose him," Michael finished. "Regina, love doesn't work that way. Our family isn't built on exclusivity. It's built on abundance. There's always room for more love, more connection." He chuckled. "After all, that's how we started, isn't it? 5 kids and counting?" Regina smiled, remembering how their family had formed, not by blood or legal documents initially, but by choice, by opening their hearts to each other's pain and healing. Gabriel gaining extended family didn't diminish what they shared. It only enriched his life further. The following spring, as the oncology center neared completion, Regina received an unexpected letter. The return address made her heart skip a beat. It was from Andrew. For days she carried it unopened, unsure whether to read it or throw it away. Finally, sitting in her office with Michael at her side, she broke the seal. The letter was brief. Andrew was dying, cancer, ironically enough, and wanted to make amends before he passed. He expressed remorse for his behavior, acknowledged the pain he had caused, and asked for forgiveness, not expecting it, but hoping for it nonetheless. He had followed her career from afar, he wrote, and was proud of what she had accomplished. He ended by saying he was glad she had found happiness. "Are you going to see him?" Michael asked, after she had read it aloud. Regina contemplated the question. 5 years ago, she might have felt vindication at Andrew's misfortune, might have seen it as justice for his betrayal. Now, she felt only compassion for another human being facing the end of life alone. Yes, she decided, not for him, but for me, to close that chapter completely. Andrew was hardly recognizable in the hospice bed. Thin, jaundiced, a shadow of the arrogant man who had once shouted obscenities in a courtroom. When Regina entered his room, his eyes widened with surprise. "You came," he whispered, his voice a rasp. "I did." They talked for over an hour. Really talked, perhaps for the first time in their relationship. Without the pressure of saving a failing marriage or the bitterness of its end, they spoke honestly about their mistakes, their regrets, the lessons they had learned too late. "I never apologized properly," Andrew said as she prepared to leave. "Not really. I was too proud, too selfish." He reached for her hand, his own cool and papery. "I am sorry, Regina, for everything. And thank you for coming today and for honoring my mother's memory with your work." "I forgive you, Andrew," she said, meaning it. "I hope you find peace." He died 3 weeks later. Regina attended the small funeral service with Michael. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no deathbed redemption that erased the past, just the quiet acknowledgement that even in broken relationships there could be healing, and that forgiveness benefited the forgiver as much as the forgiven. On the day the Regina and Eleanor Moore Center for Pediatric Oncology officially opened, the entire Moore-Lewis family stood proudly at Regina's side as she cut the ribbon. Gabriel, home from his first year of college, helped give tours to donors and community members. Ethan's artwork adorned the walls, bright, hopeful canvases designed to lift the spirits of young patients. A reporter approached Regina as the festivities continued. "Dr. Moore-Lewis, you've accomplished what many said was impossible. A fully funded, state-of-the-art oncology center in a community this size. What drives you?" Regina looked around at the space that had once been just a dream, at the treatment rooms where children would receive care, at the research labs where new protocols would be developed, at the gardens where families could find moments of peace in the midst of their hardest battles. Then she looked at her family, at Michael, her partner in all things, at their children, each one precious and unique, at Gabriel, who had fought so hard for his life and now dedicated himself to saving others. "Love," she answered simply. "Love drives me. The kind that sees beyond betrayal to possibility. The kind that builds families from broken pieces. The kind that transforms pain into purpose." That evening, as twilight settled over their backyard, Regina and Michael hosted a smaller celebration, just family and close friends. Under strings of twinkling lights, surrounded by the people who had journeyed with them through darkness into light, they raised their glasses in a toast. "To second chances," Regina said, her eyes meeting Michael's across the table, "and to the unexpected roads that lead us home." As laughter and conversation flowed around her, Regina thought about the frightened, heartbroken woman who had once stood in an airport, overhearing a conversation that changed the course of her life. How could she have known then that betrayal would lead to blessing? That losing what she thought she wanted would guide her to what she truly needed? Life offered no guarantees, no straight paths, no perfect endings, only the choice to keep moving forward, to remain open to love in all its forms, to trust that even in our darkest moments, dawn is waiting just beyond the horizon. Regina had made that choice, again and again, to trust, to hope, to love. And in doing so, she had built not just a center for healing, not just a family bound by choice rather than obligation, but a life of profound meaning and joy, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of love. As night fell and stars appeared overhead, Regina leaned against Michael's shoulder, surrounded by the family they had created together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new patience, new battles to fight. But tonight, in this moment, all was well. More than well. It was beautiful. This imperfect, unexpected life they had built from the ashes of what was lost. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.